Hello everybody, my name is Josh. I was a computer science examiner. I was a head of computer science in UK-based schools, and also I run a tutoring business where I've helped thousands of students to get better grades in all kinds of different computer science courses. Today, what we're going to be looking at is the ethics unit in the OCR and AQA specifications because they're very, very similar. Now, what I've done is I've used my knowledge as an examiner to condense down the information so that you've still got a really, really good chance of getting the top grades. Now, with all of this information, what we have to do is I want you to see the generic points that I'm going to make on ethical, legal, environmental, and then what I'm going to do is show you how to adapt those to use them in a longer style question. Now, the longer style questions, because on AQA you can get up to 9-mark questions, on OCR you can get up to 8-mark questions, and we have to write this in a particular way, and they're very, very similar. So let's have a little look. So flashcards on these. This is the legal flashcard that you're going to make. Computer Misuse Act is just anything to do with hacking, stealing data, unauthorized use of a computer system. The Data Protection Act is if a company is taking adequate steps to look after the user's data. So your school will have to make sure that it is looking after its data appropriately. Copyright Design and Patents Act is just help protect creators from having their content, inventions stolen by other people and then selling them on and pretending that it's their own. Generic environmental advantages and disadvantages. Environmental advantages, if you use less transport, that's going to be less greenhouse gases, so that's better. Less use of machinery to create something, so if you're not having to get the raw materials out of the earth to create something, that's great. More efficient, so it doesn't need to use as many greenhouse gases, so again, other generic points. The disadvantages are just the inverse. More transport, more greenhouse gases. More use of machinery, so that's going to mean that you need more raw materials, that's a bad thing. Less efficient, you need more greenhouse gases to power it. Now, the ethical advantages improve productivity. So let's have a little look about how I can relate that to a question. So if we said improve productivity, I could say autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles, people can drive, right? And then they can get on with work because they don't have to focus on driving. That's improved productivity. I could also make that point more relevant to, I could make it relevant to cloud storage. So people can get on with work in lots of different locations at the same time. They don't have to drive to work. So improved productivity is going to be better. The same point can be used for multiple topics. Safety. So if it's going to be safer, autonomous vehicles may make it safer for us. You could also say robots. So robots are going to be going into dangerous locations, and it could be then that human beings were going into, so lives are going to be saved. Easier to communicate. Wireless technology is going to allow for more people to communicate all around the world. Cloud storage is going to be easier to collaborate on very difficult documents over a large geographical area. The disadvantages. People could lose jobs, so that's a generic point. So autonomous vehicles, taxi drivers are going to go out of business. Lorry drivers are going to go out of business. Robotics, the robots are going to be taking people's jobs. If there's a hack that happens and it steals lots of data, people may get sacked. People are going to lose jobs. So same point, different topics that we can use it for. Unsafe. So if something is unsafe and it causes health and safety reasons. A big point that they like you to talk about is something called the digital divide. So some people are going to have this, whatever technology it is. So if we talk autonomous vehicles, some people are going to benefit from that. Some people may not be able to afford it. That means it's going to create a divide between the haves and the have-nots. And you can make that about a lot of points. People who use cloud storage, people who don't use cloud storage. People who use wireless technology, people who don't. People who use autonomous vehicles, people who don't. So again, it's the one point for lots of topics, condensing that information down. Now, how do we relate this into a longer form question? Now, when I was examining this, we were told that what we had to do is we had to make sure that the student had a flowing argument that covered multiple points. A minimum, you need to make 4 points. And I would say that you need to make 2 advantages and 2 disadvantages to have a chance at getting 8 marks. If you can make more, what you are going to do, that's obviously going to be great, and that's going to make a case that you should be getting the top marks. But I think a minimum 2 advantages, 2 disadvantages. If it says discuss, it doesn't. Whilst you can make a conclusive point at the end, I don't think it's necessary to get an 8 out of 8. I've given students 8 out of 8 that did not make conclusive points because their argument was so good. Now let's have a look at how I've written this. So it says, autonomous vehicles would be cars and lorries that drive themselves. Make the point, show the examiner that you know what it's talking about. An advantage of this is environmentally, these cars would be much more efficient at driving than a human driver, so less greenhouse gases would be emitted. So again, I've just taken one of those points that we talked about in the environment and related it to that scenario, talking about how cars and stuff are using it. Then what I've done is talked about a legal disadvantage, which is all talking about how if a hacker breaks in, this could cause huge damage, and this would essentially break the Computer Misuse Act. So disadvantage on another topic, so a legal topic. So I've changed from environmental to legal, but I've also changed advantage to disadvantage. We were told that we want to see a flowing argument. If you just bullet point it, the maximum that you will get is 6 or 7 marks. Okay, you cannot get the full marks if you just bullet point. They want to see that you've got good written English. Then I've gone back onto an advantage. An advantage is people would be safer, as the cars would be better drivers, and it wouldn't matter if people drank alcohol. A disadvantage, though, is people would lose jobs as they would no longer be needed for taxis. So again, I've gone back to the disadvantage. So the way in which you get the 8 and 9 marks is that you have to talk about all areas, ethical, legal, environmental, switch between advantages and disadvantages, and write it in a logical structure like I've done. That's how you get the top marks. And I say a minimum 4 points. 2 advantages, 2 disadvantages.